Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:02. I'm Vice Mayor Todd Lamb. The meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N 2920, which suspended certain requirements of the Brown Act. Attendees may join the meeting in person or through the use of Zoom at the given link. Zoom attendees will be muted until they are called upon for the public comment. To make a public comment, use the raise hand icon on your smart device or desktop computer, or dial *9 if you're using just your telephone. Please listen carefully for the chair or city clerk to address you by name or number, and for the audible Zoom notification that you have been unmuted. Once you begin your public comment, your 3 minutes will begin. Like I said, I am the chair. I'm Vice Mayor Todd Lamb. This is Madam Mayor Martin Cruz. And I'll let everyone else introduce themselves to the table and just say thank you for joining us in our meeting. David, please.
Thank you, Chair Land. My name is David Kelly, I'm City Manager.
And stated manifestos made.
Kevin Thompson, City Manager.
Jason Ferguson, Police Chief.
Okay, and on Zoom, we'll start with Blake.
Good afternoon. My name is Blake Manning, and I'm the substance abuse counselor at Alexander Valley Healthcare.
Anna.
Hello, my name is Anna Rangel. I'm the Director of Operations at Reach for Home.
Thank you. Jody.
Hi there, I'm Jody Kane. I'm with Alexander Valley Healthcare, and I'm the Behavioral Health Case Manager here.
Margaret.
Hi, I'm Margaret Slyke, and I am on the Continuum of Care Board, and I'm also the CEO of Reach for Home.
Melanie.
Hi, Melanie Hall, Program Manager of the Cloverdale Senior Multipurpose Center.
Thank you. Savannah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Savannah Hempel, and I'm the Associate Director at the Cloverdale Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you to all the attendees in person and on Zoom. Update on local homelessness activities. I'll start real quick. I don't have much since our last meeting. It's been pretty quiet on the home front. I know that there has been some action with one of our local homeless. We have been trying to get help, and I would ask Colleen to speak to that if she doesn't mind. I saw her there. Colleen, if you could talk to us about the one that you guys worked so hard on and what the information you found out.
Sure. So it was a client that we've been working with for the last 10, 11 years since I've been with the agency, who we kept trying to encourage to get some help. Medical condition has gotten much, much worse, very close to, some people think that he's terminal. So he did finally acquiesce to getting some help. We got him in the Orinda. And then to make a long story short, it was, he kept bouncing back out because of issues related to them holding him in the emergency room for 16 hours, and then the cravings set in, and he came back up to Cloverdale. We did manage to get him back to Orinda, and then the next day he went to Center Point, with much effort from about, I think I counted 16 people, including people at this table in this room. So anyway, he did leave, which is kind of typical that at about a week, when they start to detox and they stop their detox meds, that they start to get really uncomfortable. So he unfortunately came back, but we haven't given up. We hope to get him back there, and there may be a medical intervention again because he needs to keep going to the emergency. So anyway, prayers for him, and but a lot of people tried real hard.
Thanks, Colleen. I saw him on the way in, and he looks awful. And one of the guys that we came out was stopped him on the street a couple of days ago, and said that they just walked over him with his day to day.
Yeah.
So he's supposed to be very well.
Right.
So, David,
Sure. Thank you, Vice Mayor and Chair. A couple of updates. One, I want to, I know Margaret's going to talk about this later, but I just want to mention today McCammon from Reach for Home, providing outreach services and really conducting welfare checks to some of our unsheltered populations in downtown. They got to see the new van and the supplies that it is able to contain within its storage area. So I just decided to report that out that we saw the van in action. They do come up to Cloverdale on Tuesdays and Fridays. I think that's been a pretty consistent schedule for several years now. But we did chat briefly with Jim, and he was going to bring water to some of our unsheltered population because the weather's a little hot, and make sure that there's adequate hydration for that population. Concurrently, I wanted to just provide a quick update on some county efforts regarding homelessness. The County Board of Supervisors commissioned a study by a consulting firm, international consulting firm called KPMG. KPMG did an analysis of homelessness programs and policies implemented by the county. The county is currently seeking input on that study. It was presented to the board earlier this year, but they're continuing to look at kind of the organizational structure for the county in terms of how best to consolidate the various funding sources that are out there for homelessness, and to put in place a governance structure that aligns with that funding and is able to get that funding out to the street and out to our nonprofit organizations. I just wanted to mention it because a lot of the funding for homelessness services, programs, projects, and activities, come through and are funneled by the county. And so the outcome of this study may result in a series of recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, and there may be some reorganization changes. My recommendation is for all of us to continue to track the progress of the KPMG report as it kind of makes its way to the public, and that we make sure that we reflect our interest in that process to our board representatives, in this case, Supervisor Gore. There is going to be a presentation on the KPMG study on Thursday evening to the Mayors and Council Members Association. So there'll be an overview by the consultant. And I know from a city perspective, we're not in complete alignment with what we think are the recommendations that are provided in that study. So there's certainly an opportunity for us to weigh in, and ultimately, if requested, it can come back to our Cloverdale City Council. I know our mayor has been involved in ad hoc, and there's been some homelessness ad hoc, and there's been some discussion about it, but it's in process. So there's likely more to report on that, but I just want to bring everybody's attention that this consulting work is out there, and it may result in a change in the structure of how the county organizes around homelessness, and ultimately around how funding is provided to our nonprofit organizations. The chair, that's the end of my report. Thank you.
David, could you say the name of the organization again?
Happy to give you the name of the report is the KPMG report. They're an international consulting firm, and if it's okay with the chair and vice chair, I can send out a kind of summary overview of that, and you can take a look at it. It's available for public comment, so certainly encourage everybody who's interested in looking at the models that they're recommending to provide their feedback.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
We were supposed to have an emergency shelter ad hoc meeting yesterday, but it didn't take place. So, no reports from that.
Chief?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to report out either. It seems to be kind of status quo right now, but since our last meeting on the 13th of July, we continue to see improvements in the plaza by implementing the curfew. However, what's happening now is they're gravitating across the street and hanging out in a new spot. doing the best we can. And again, we're addressing folks that aren't necessarily wanting resources or assistance. So it's a bit of a challenge for us to then move on to the application. We have to start the process over in the application. So, I'm sure you're seeing that them across the street. So we'll continue to deal with that. Our activity levels since the July 13th meeting, we've conducted 47 different independent homeless-related contests, 26 with the plaza. So we continue to actively be out there and monitor the situation. We're still struggling with what do we do process. Do we cite, do we arrest, just not having success in. And I think we just heard from Colleen about the difficulty of trying to get somebody who clearly needs the help, getting them through the process of receiving that help. It's a constant battle. We will continue to do our early warning patrols, seeking out businesses and ensuring that their access points are open, available, and I think we've had many problems with that, at least none that are being reported. And again, we're struggling with the regulars that continually are being moved from one spot to another. There are countless calls on at least 2 individuals for this very thing. Again, it kind of just goes back to our challenges with what we do. We tried everything 50. Ultimately, they do end up, unfortunately, with arrest and then unfortunately with warrants, which has happened recently. But here we are again, just kind of in the same situation. So they've added one more 50 or more of us to the process. So I'm not saying it's the best thing, but right now, it's really our only alternatives. Part of some of the things you might see more things happening that we haven't gotten control of. We're really short-handed right now, so our regular enforcement activities that we've had have kind of been reduced a little bit because of staff associated. So hopefully that can continue much longer. We get back out and proactive. I did drive through the riverbed today to put them across the bridge. All was clear and all was good. So I was happy to see that. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Chief. And since you mentioned that there hasn't been any update to the county, I'm on a continual email pushing and prodding to get the work done that we have with vegetation management. This, and they're not giving us any information other than we should meet. And that's as far as they go. So I don't know why they're dragging their feet, however they are. And so I will continue to push and see what we can do to move this project along. Evan, please. I don't really have any updates. Chief, the other day somebody mentioned, and I know that you kind of answered this question already, but I just want to get it out there. Somebody mentioned that one of the homeless people that was attending something in the plaza has a stay away order of that plaza. Are we doing anything to be proactive with those? Are they using this as tools to continually push people out as they get these restraining orders or whatever they are?
Yes.
Registration, probation, probably.
So I won't say people, I'll say it's more of a single individual. But yeah, and we're that person does have to say, well, so we're trying to make those efforts to do that, but also, that again comes down to the enforcement aspect of this, and I'm right back to square one, because unfortunately that isn't going to solve that problem either. But it is a tool, much like a curfew was, to try to keep that area. We were generating a lot of complaints about that. So even though that's now kind of now we're dealing with them in a different location. So we're just going to have to keep trucking along if we do this. Hopefully, I say this with all confidence. I think if we can get resources and help for 4 individuals in the city, I think we would see a dramatic change. And I think the reports and complaints would be substantially lower than what we receive. And so if we can really focus on those, I say 4, everybody here would probably agree it's 3 to 4 that really need the attention and need the resources. And I think we would see a whole different situation if that were the case. I'm really going to encourage that. And I'm also in the process of drafting a letter to the businesses that do have stores need to be educated on serving overly intoxicated folks, and hopefully that will reduce a little bit as well. So that's what we're doing.
Thanks, sir. With those 4 individuals, if we were to try to hone in on the resources that are needed to get them whatever help is necessary, who would we put on that list or on the email to put out? Listen, let's focus on these 4 please. Who are the people you would want on that list?
As far as resource help,
As far as if I was going to draft an email tomorrow, I know there's specific needs for these certain people. Maybe we need to fire out a list of these people, and you don't have to name them all right now. What I might say is, maybe we focus on those 4 that have high needs, and we start pushing in that direction more than the overall big picture.
I think
high need.
2 for sure. We need to really address either the courts or mental health, or whatever that process is, for conservatorship of 2 of those individuals. So whatever process that takes, because I'm trying to reach out to a caseworker for one of them regarding conservatorship, and I really didn't get a whole lot of assistance, and it didn't end up anywhere. Basically, I was told that that's in progress, but clearly it's not being resolved, because this was months ago when I attended this, and the individual continues to be here. So I would say the 2 priority individuals, it's a conservatorship issue, and we need, I don't know all the process to go in, obviously above my pay grade, so maybe starting there, and then really advocating for that mobile unit from the Measure O funding to really reach out here and literally come out to the plaza and contact some of these folks and really get out to our city. Because to this day, I know I've heard different things. I haven't seen it. I can't honestly say that I've seen it happen or even heard that South here doing it. I'm not saying that it's not. I just know it appears that it could be more. If it is happening, it might need to be more. So that would be the other, is to get that mobile unit out. I think the avenues by Colleen have already been taken for the 1 individual, and I'm not 100% sure. I would think personally that a person suffering to that degree is not capable of making a conscious decision to take away for themselves, which would qualify for 5150. But again, if that doesn't do it, I don't know what does. I'll leave it at that. So I think those avenues are trying to be covered.
Colleen?
Well, that's a good point. And so how do we get the IMDT and the HEART team up here to follow up with that 1 individual and also engage them with the other 3? Because if they're not plugged into this, I'm not sure how this process works.
So when we brought Art down to the river, they said they were never been invited here. And we kept our mouth shut, bit our tongue, and I think that maybe we just invite them every day. And become the person who wants to make sure that they know that we need them here.
Right, and I'm not sure why it would require an invitation, but if we had them commit to a certain schedule, and I know Margaret probably, so I could be able to chime in on this. She's got a lot of knowledge in this area, and I think getting us together with the IMDT and our team, because they were very, very helpful and plugged in with our 1 individual. And I think that they are motivated to do it. We just need to get them to commit to the schedule.
We get Margaret?
Yeah, it's my understanding that they don't typically work on a schedule necessarily. My understanding of the IMDT team and where we've had the most success with them is where you tell them about the 1 individual and you strategize on a plan to get them 5150. We had a little bit of success with a person in Healdsburg where they brought in a mental health professional from, I think, Sacramento or somewhere. We had the police, we had Reach for Home, we had a whole, there were 4 or 5 people there. They were able to kind of get the person to answer the questions in a way that they could 5150 them, not by, coercing them or anything, but just the mental health provider was key. And then they were able to, Jackie at Reach for Home was then able to make some phone calls and really try to find more of a long-term solution versus just a couple days, because they get, medicine, they're fine, and then they get released, and then they're not fine, and it's just this vicious cycle. So they were able to then transfer the person to the Bay Area to a long-term bed. And I think they were there for about 3 months, which is better than a 24, 48, 72 hour type of a 5150. Now they're back on the street again. They seem okay. Now we're trying to kind of help them stay on their medication. But that's where I've seen the success with the IMDT team. I think I don't know that they typically go out like street outreach would. The HEART team is for encampment, to try to clear encampments and help people get into shelter. And they have some incentives to help do that. And they'll come like a couple times, and then, they'll clear the encampment. But that's my general understanding of the two teams and kind of how we can leverage them. And I'd be happy to, maybe we can get together and talk about the two individuals and see if we can do something similar for those two individuals that we were able to do for this. This was a recent case in Healdsburg that was at least more successful than what we're used to. Long-term results aren't in yet, but.
Chair, may I ask Margaret? Margaret, would it be possible to perhaps invite members from these two teams to join you on some of your outreach so that they can also become familiar with what the situation is locally?
We have actually had the IMD team try to come out with us 3 different occasions, and unfortunately each time there was an issue on their end. And so they came out to Cloverdale, but not with us because of just one, there was a shooting that they were worried about. One, they couldn't find the location, they got lost, and then there was another situation. So we've been trying to coordinate, specifically in Cloverdale too, is where we were trying to get them to meet us. So we will keep trying. And I don't think, it's their fault or anything. It just, it didn't work out, and they were up there by themselves.
The same thing as with HEART?
I'm sorry, I can't hear. It's hard to hear you, guys.
Yeah, the same with HEART. Is that the same situation with HEART?
HEART is just for encampments. It's the E in HEART stands for encampments. So they're called out when there's an encampment that a city or town has concerns about and needs help with, and so they'll do that. IMDT is more like they will manage, actually. They'll take an unsheltered individual, and this is part of what I'm going to talk about later, but they'll bring together public defender, the justice system, the medical system, the behavioral health care system, and they'll intensively case manage the person to try to get them out of homelessness. They are focused a lot in Santa Rosa because that's, it's where most of the people are, but if we need them, they have been a partner with us up in North County as well.
So that sounds like a good news that we don't have any encampments. Is that so?
We do have encampments.
So
we need to have both. What we can do is we can put together an email with both groups, asking for both things, and set up times that we can meet and join them.
Yeah, and I'm not sure of your interpretation of the Boise decision, but I know that the HEART team is, they'll come and offer shelter. I don't know if they can offer shelter if it's available, which I know we had a problem with a few weeks ago. But their whole goal is to help clear encampments, from what I understand. So there's just different philosophies about how, depending on the Boise law and stuff, because North County does not have shelter. So I don't know how Cloverdale interprets that. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, you think that were available last week?
oh, that was at Center Point though.
Oh, sorry.
We have talked about
COVID affected the bed situation because of the Delta breakout. From what I understand, at least last I heard, it changes daily, of course, but.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. Erin, I see we have Michael's hand up. You were demented as a panelist, probably. He did.
Hello. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Michael, I saw you had your hand up a little bit ago, and then you put it down. Would you like to speak? I guess not. Okay. Anyone else from the public want to comment? Please, Sean.
Mr. Chair, thank you. If I could, I had a couple things I wanted to make sure I was clear on. Chief, the plaza.
Yes.
So it sounds like we're effectively doing a little more enforcement there, chasing them out of the plaza, and the end result is now they're parking front business.
Well, I wouldn't use the word chase. What we're doing is we've been actively patrolling and ensuring compliance with our ordinances and ensuring laws aren't being violated, because again, we have a group who does not wish to receive services.
Yes, sir.
That do like to consume alcohol.
Correct.
And do like some somewhat problematic.
Yes, sir.
So what happens once the curfew, when that was enforced there, then what we did is they had to go, once the curfew was enforced, they had to move out of the plaza area. So essentially what happened is they're not hanging out in the plaza any longer, or they're going across the street.
Yes, sir. What time's the curfew over there at the plaza?
It's 7 to 10.
7 a.m.
10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
I'm sorry, one more time, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
10 p.m.
Oh, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Okay. So my concern, of course, is I'm seeing them at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Out for our salon, right along that stretch there. So I'm curious, how do we get a hold of that? So at 10 o'clock, I don't think anybody's concerned. Chasing out the plaza, they go down the cemetery, they go down the river, they sleep in the entryways of businesses. That doesn't seem to have changed. I'm curious though, was it the increase in a police presence there at the plaza that made them feel uncomfortable to the point that even during daytime hours, they felt, well, it's a better bet for us to just park across the street. Now, my concern with that, of course, is just why? The plaza is a public spot. These are private business owners who I'm sure are a little irritated and frustrated with what's going on. How do we manage that?
So it's a difficult balance. So I will start with the fact that I cannot answer for the individuals that were in the plaza as to why they decided to leave, why they no longer came out as much, because that's their opinion. So why?
Sure.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yes, sir.
What I will say is there was a lot of complaints during calls we got about the plaza and activities that were taking place in the plaza. So we did step up our enforcement patrol activities, foot patrols. I purposely made more foot patrols in the plaza to at least ensure compliance with ordinances and criminal codes. That's the whole purpose of that.
Yes, sir.
In the process, it was starting to remedy some of the issues with them hanging out. And then all of a sudden we got the curfew, then we started to enforce. And so after hours, they had to move on somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
I realized, like I said earlier, the challenge becomes they go somewhere else and they happen now to choose a place across the street in the business district in front of businesses. So now we again will be looking to enforce and ensure compliance with our ordinances and any criminal code that may be applicable, drinking, smoking for the ordinance, things like that. So, but understand, every time now we start to do more foot patrol in the business district now, it may then in turn run them somewhere else.
Sure.
Kind of what I brought up is your challenge. No matter what, I'm gonna get calls now from the business district versus when I was getting them from the plaza, which also came from the business district. So it's a very difficult challenge, to be honest with you.
I understand. No, please, I do. I very much.
Because we also we can't just, stomp on their rights.
Of course.
In the bottom line, we still have rights to them.
Yes, sir.
Cautious.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a great deal of respect for that. Thank you. Personally, as a business owner and a resident here, I'd rather see them in the block. They're right across from the police department. It seems like a great opportunity to keep a very good eye on them and be able to enforce those ordinances. Now that throws the businesses out of sight, out of mind. I don't see a whole lot of enforcement going on. Man, these guys have been parked up over there now for weeks, and there's a number of them, and they are having a raucous good time over there. I can only imagine. Well, I don't have to. I give them my place too. As you're well aware, to this day, I still see 3 or 4 of them every single day. They come for peanut butter jelly sandwiches, they come for a ride across town, hey, Sean, you borrow me a couple of bucks. Unfortunately, man, I know we're in a horrible spot. I came today, excited to, engage again in public comment. I thought maybe something would change. We made some progress in the last week, really progressed at all. We're in the same mess. The 4 individuals that we refer to know them well. The one gentleman that Colleen speaks to, he calls me every day. Usually 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, trying to escape from Melinda. He's had enough. The others, I've been here for 14 years. It was the same ones. I don't believe we have a homeless problem. I believe we have an individual problem. Not a homeless problem with Susan, Trent, Teresa, Joe. That's the problem. And each one of them has a different set of needs. Each one of them needs a different direction. I like Reach for Home. I know these other programs are, and I know about them. They ain't coming. And they ain't 5150 to anybody because they haven't done it in 14 years. I've seen a lot of them come and go. They've got services for a minute or two, and they're right. These folks have families. These people are born and raised in this town. I don't know that, you're in a tough spot. I see them as soon as they're out of jail. They're at my house. Hey, Sean, I just got out of a couple of months, man. I'm ready to go again. Nothing's changed. We've made more progress.
So I'd like to respond to that.
Yes, sir, please.
A couple things.
Of course,
Let
yeah.
me start with the fact that I'm going to disagree with you that we haven't made progress. I think we have made progress.
I'd like to hear more about that.
I think what we tried to establish here, I think Colleen brought up an excellent example. I know Chair Lance brought up examples of his efforts to try to get assistance to those that we believe need it.
Yes, sir.
That is the same effort on our end. When we talk about one individual 8 times being taken in for 5150, it's not because it's a nuisance we want to get them off the street. It's because we recognize that this person is suffering and we think and believe by doing this they're going to get appropriate help. That's not happening.
Yes, sir.
So,
and there's no disagreement there, correct? We agree?
But where I disagree with that is portrayed as a lack of effort on the parts of everybody involved here, and I will disagree with you on that.
I'm sorry, if I gave you the misunderstanding that was my portrayal, please allow me to make that correction. I don't believe that there's been a lack of effort from a lot of people in this community, including yourself, Chief. Colleen, of course, Mr. Lance, but we're still kind of doing the same dance, Chair Lance asked Colleen, how many beds do we have? That does not apply to Cloverdale. And Colleen, she worked with a select group. I know what the process was to get the young man in question into a program. Wasn't easy. I'm sure there had to be some strings that were pulled. There had to be somebody that stepped up and said, this one, please, help this guy. That's not an everyday sort of thing, and yet still, couldn't do it. And again, please, let me be clear. I don't think it's a lack of efforts from us here in Cloverdale. But I think as we continue to look to outside sources to solve this, we're coming back to the same table. Every single time, the same issue.
So I think that you're hitting the exact point that we hit every meeting, and why I get on my soapbox and want to be on the committee.
Yes, sir.
Because it's not us.
Oh, no, I agree with you.
Those
yes,
that are above it, I want to sit there and stick a fork in their neck and sit there and poke them until they finally listen.
Sure.
And that's where we're at. And that's why we're kind of we're making a list of, who can we contact, put in the groups of portions to come up here.
Yes, sir.
Just like the vegetation at the river, 25 years, they haven't had a chapter on that riverbed. We have full permission to spread everything down there now, to clean it out.
Yes, sir.
All you have to do is bring them here to listen to see it firsthand and say, no, we're not going to offer that person any help. No, we're not going to fix this problem. So that's what we're trying to do, because we can sit here and talk about this for a blow in the face. We're not going to get anywhere. We've been doing it for 3 years.
We have.
3.5 years. And we just rotated a couple people, brought in a new team. All this shit goes on. I'm sorry, but
so what I want to emphasize more than anything, okay, I agree with you, Chief. I think we've all in Cloverdale done a fabulous job with the resources and the opportunities we've had. When do we take control of it ourselves? In Cloverdale, when do we start writing ordinance for camping on the river? When do we start making real change in Cloverdale for Cloverdale residents? When do we find a place so we don't have to talk to Sam Jones? Hey, what kind of place? As you're well aware, COVID is just right. Ain't nobody going to Sam Jones. I've drove a number of these longtime residents that are homeless and been in these issues to Sam Jones multiple times. they can't get past the door before they're like, oh, hell no. I'm not living there, I ain't staying there, no, take me back to Cloverdale. When do we begin to really stop doing that, bringing more people to the table, and the people that have been at the table for the years that they have, create solutions here to address close? I'm not talking, let's get somebody from Sacramento or from North, somebody to come up and take a look, and maybe they can 5150. I'm talking that when do we get that opportunity to say, hey, we have a shelter here in town. We now have an ordinance on the river you can't count. You have a choice. You can come be arrested, or we can offer you a 10 by 10 garden shed with a padlock on it. 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. you can get in. After that, you're on your own.
I'll give you a little bit of information on that. There is ordinances on the river, but according to Martin, it doesn't allow it anymore.
Because we don't have a place for them to stay. Am I correct?
That's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
1915 of the county code tells you can't camp on the river.
Yeah.
I know it by heart.
Yeah. And
So
unfortunately,
there are
because
ways.
of Boise, at least my understanding of it is, you can give them an option. We have shelter for you. Do you have a place to stay? We can give you a ride there now. Or you can be arrested for camping on the river. What we're missing is that opportunity to say, we have a place for you. When do we get that?
There's a lot more to it, and I'll, just to be honest, there's a lot more to it. Right? You're touching the baseline of it. Absolutely, I agree. There's a lot more to it than that, and this is where Governor Newsom just gave $12 billion to California for homelessness. We have to show why we need to tap into that to get those resources you're talking about that are available to us to make that possible.
Okay.
With that, I gotta move on.
If we could in the future, I'd like to see us spend our time really working at Cloverdale. I hear you, and I trust it. There's a lot more to it. I'd like to see our focus become more in line with what more is there to it. And not the funding or grant. You have a number of people, myself included, as a private property owner for a prime piece of Cloverdale property there that's light and been event. I offered it for free to the county. Said, look, I'll happily walk away if you can solve this problem. Put a row of garden sheds in there, get security, start developing a program for Cloverdale. When do we get there? Again, it's been years. I understand it's complicated.
And I'm not afraid to work in the gray area. Everyone knows that I love the gray area. We'll find it. We'll find these solutions. We will. And that's my goal here. And I'm not going to sit here and have meetings. I'm not that kind of guy. And so we're getting closer now than I've seen us in years. David's got a plan for the city. Now we're going to find a way to actually make things work.
Okay.
With that, I'm going to move on to Margaret, if you don't mind, to your presentation, because I'd like to see what you have going with Reach for Home. That's going to help us here in Cloverdale.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm just going to go over some numbers that we have and give you a little context for those numbers. And for privacy, I'm just going to talk about the numbers. I'd be happy afterwards to send just kind of a by numbers document if everybody would be. I wasn't sure the format of this meeting, so I apologize. First, I just want to start by explaining kind of what the numbers are and what Reach for Home has been doing. For the last couple of months, we have been doing surveys to all of the unsheltered individuals in North County and trying to get as many people surveyed as we can. Basically, when we keep being asked, what do you need? What do you need to solve this problem? And the answer was, well, we know we need housing, we know we need some shelter, but we really don't have how much of it do we need? And we really didn't know, because the last thing we want to do is focus on building a shelter, building more units, and not having people who want to go to those units. So that was kind of the genesis of why we conducted the survey, was to find out specifically how many people do we need to house that want to be housed, and how many would be willing to take shelter, and where are they willing to take it? Because that's another issue too that's already been brought up on this meeting, is there are people that they won't leave Cloverdale or leave the Cloverdale or Healdsburg. So just kind of honing in and figuring out where these people are, what kind of housing they'll accept, I think will really help us understand at least that piece of what we can do to help. We also surveyed them about jobs and some other items as well. So I'm going to go over some of that data. But I also want to just go over a new way that, and it's not really new, we've been doing this on a smaller scale for years, but there's a new kind of way in which a lot of organizations throughout Sonoma County are doing their case management with unsheltered individuals, and it's a by names list. And so what that is, it's a real-time list of all known people experiencing homelessness in the local community. It includes data points like what we're gathering and what other organizations have started to gather. And it's the coordinated access and prioritization at a household level to really help each individual kind of get out of homelessness and stay out of homelessness. So it's what I explained earlier, like the IMDT team, where they're pulling together the justice system, the mental health system, and they're taking one individual and they're all wrapping their arms around it and figuring out, how can we solve this person? How can we help this person? So Reach for Home started doing our survey a couple months ago, and we're doing a by names list type of support system as well, just to give everybody some background information about what we're doing with the data. So in Cloverdale specifically is the data that I have tonight. We have been able to survey 17 people. We're still working on getting our numbers up, but we have 17 people that we've surveyed. We had only 3 of those 17 so far say, I don't want housing. So the other 14 are willing to be housed and want to be housed. The 3 that said no housing, all of those 3 either have a job or they're looking for a job, but they prefer to live outside. That's what they told us, is that they want to live outside, but they are employable and they want to be employed. One person specifically wants carpentry and gardening work, and the other one construction. I'm not sure about the third. I think the third one actually has a job already and they are working. So the 14 that want housing, all of them said that they would take either a low income apartment with case management services potentially, or they would take a tiny shelter, somewhat like Los Guilicos out in Oakmont. So most of them, their primary choice was an apartment, but they would be willing to move. All of them said either. I'll take any kind of shelter or housing. They all said that, well, let's see here, 10 of them said that they want to stay close to Cloverdale. So there were only 4 that would go to Healdsburg of those 10. And then there were, I think there were 1 or 2 people that said that they would go anywhere. So, you know, they could go to Santa Rosa or be relocated anywhere in the county. So we're keeping track of that as well, just so we can make sure we match people with where they want to go, because it's all about consent. People have to consent to go. So we've got a path of consent here is what we're trying to get to. These people consider Cloverdale their home by and large. 8 of them, of the 17, or 8 of the 14 that want housing, are willing case management services and have someone help them stay in the housing, which is a big deal. Not everybody wants that, and they don't have to take it if it's housing first dollars. So that's a good sign. And actually, 2 that we have on here, we might be able to partner with Wallace House, because they are okay with sobriety requirements. So now we have, and maybe one of them is actually, I don't know, we have just initials for privacy purposes. One of them might be the person Colleen has been working with. So Colleen, I need to reach out to you actually, and let's see who those 2 people are. And so what we're doing with this data, all of these people are entered into the homeless management information system in Sonoma County. They're all entered in by their social security numbers and or birthdays and unique identifiers, and all of the notes of what we've met with them about, what their situation is, are all in the database. It's a county-wide database. And so we will start by taking a couple of people per outreach coordinator. So we have 2, so each person will have 5 or so people, and will just start intensively case managing them and working and partnering with various organizations and agencies, much like the IMDT team, including the IMDT team that we coordinate with. And we will just chip away at it. So, you know, the two people you were talking about earlier, I'm sure that we've been trying to help them, and I could probably tell you who they are. But I think, you know, that's kind of separate from this, because those two people, if they're who I think they are beyond case management. It's mental health, it's conservatorship, it's a whole different thing. So we're managing that type of individual a little bit differently. And that would be coordinating with the IMDT team, with the police, you know, kind of like what I explained before. The people in by names list that we're case managing are people that we can help set goals with. We can help them with small things while they're unsheltered to prepare them for housing, and we can then get them a voucher when one is available and work through the coordinated entry system and all of those sorts of things. So that's in a nutshell the data that I have to present and kind of what we're working on and what we have so far for Cloverdale.
Thank you, Margaret. Questions from the audience?
I know there's different categories of the homeless, and there's one in particular that has been starting fires, setting fires and stuff like that. Are we like handling that case?
I'm so sorry. It's really hard to hear the people at the table. I can hear Todd well, but it's hard. Can you repeat that?
Table. Where's the microphone? So you can
Stand by me.
I know this new hybrid thing is it's all new to us, hybrid stuff, right? So I apologize. Thank you.
So I know that there's like varying degrees of homeless people. So there is one in particular, I don't know if you're aware of her, but she has set fires, intentional fires to get revenge on another homeless person, setting fire, a good sized fire behind people's homes. And she's aggressive, and there's been multiple cases and stuff. There's been multiple fires due to the homeless people. So how are you guys dealing with that?
Well, our role in the community is to offer services, try to build relationships, and try to build relationships to the point where we can help people not want to set a fire. But at the end of the day, if it's coming down to safety or fire, that is not really in our scope. I mean, we'll do whatever we can to try to talk someone, you know, into not doing that. But really, we would implore that, like, we would call the police, and that would be something that we would have to work on, I would say, because that's, you know, our services are based on consent and building relationships and trying to get that person to say, yes, I want help. Will you help me? If they say no, they don't want help. I mean, nobody can force anybody to do anything. And I think that's why we're all here today, is because there's not a solution to the people who say, I don't want help. I mean, you can move them around, you can sweep them, you can arrest them, you can try your hardest to get them mental health help and all of those things. But our role is to build relationships and offer services and try to get them to work with us and do case management. So I don't know if that clarifies anything. I mean, we obviously don't want people setting fires, and we'll do whatever we can to partner with the police and fire departments.
Thank you, Margaret. Can I ask you to get your name for the recording?
Yeah, and
Thank you. And that person was arrested twice for different things along the lines of speaking about. So as we talked about problems being bigger than us, things not being done at the next level, and that's where our fight needs to start.
Yeah,
definitely. Everything we do, you can see where it has the dead end or the disconnect.
Yeah, from what I'm understanding, she's getting either arrested or booked, but then released again to do the same thing over again. And from what I can tell, she's got mental issues. So we need to address that. And I definitely, I'm 100% for shelters, for getting these people help. And there was a term that used that, you know, some of them, they need conservatorship because maybe they can't make that decision for themselves.
And
They are threatening our town.
I know
And
this
that's
comes
not
up on,
okay.
I know this comes up on almost every meeting, but that again is another reason why to really push for Laura's Law, because I feel like, if I'm not mistaken, and Todd, you might be able to chime in, but that would be where that law would help us with that individual, I believe. Because it's, if they're harming themselves or showing that they're harming others, it's a conservatorship, and it's a type of conservatorship that we don't have access to right now in this county, because it was not voted on. And there's a lot of complexities behind by passing the law. There are other things that have to happen, and I think that's why it didn't pass. But I do think that there's some advocacy there that we can all do that would help.
You're absolutely right about Laura's Law. I know that James Gore supports it and advocates for it. I know that it's very expensive for each person to get them to that point through Laura's Law, and that might be the hang up. So it is one way for conservatorship. It's the expensive way and long way around. However, it's all we can do as us, is push them for that. Could you get Angela next? Thank you, Irene. Angela, you're up. Angela, are you still there?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So, Reach for Home already has several homes in Cloverdale. So who's living there? Here. Who's living in those homes? That's what I'd like to know.
Formerly unsheltered individuals are living in those homes. We have one bed available right now in our home, one of our homes that we're looking to fill.
They're not Cloverdale unsheltered. They're people that you're bringing from all over the county. And why do we have to do coordinated entry? That's just going to end up with a shelter and other county problems here in Cloverdale. And you said you're doing research and studies. Who's overseeing your research and your count? Because obviously there was falsified counts before.
This is an informal survey that we're using for our knowledge and ability to find out where we need to get the funding for the housing. So, I mean, we're doing it because we need to know the data in order to solve the problem. So it's something that we're doing at Reach for Home, and that's something that I'm overseeing. And
Angela, I would actually go on and say that I've seen the list and the information, and it is done very well and very accurately, and it's way better than it was in the past. And Margaret's doing a completely different job than what we experienced a few years ago. And I am very supportive of what she's doing so far. So let me ask you in a different way, kind of what I think Angela might be getting at. You said we had about 10 people that wanted housing and wanted to stay near Cloverdale. With that bed, how hard is it to take one of our people and get them into that bed?
We try to prioritize Cloverdale people into the Cloverdale housing, because we know that people don't want to come from Healdsburg to Cloverdale in general. I mean, we have the same data for Healdsburg that is very similar. You know, people want to stay where they are for the most part. The funding that we get, I mean, it a lot of times comes down to the ability to pay for it. We have to have case management and those sorts of things. And some of that money is tied to the coordinated entry system. So we do our best to play within that system to get people that are local into the housing that we have. But our hands can sometimes be tied. And actually, Colleen has been a huge help to us in trying to find creative solutions to get funding that's not tied to coordinated entry. And we are looking at that and trying, you know, to find a solution that would include not having to go through that system, you know, having both and working with both so that we have more flexibility. But right now, you know, we're not there yet. But again, thanks to Colleen, you know, we're really trying to get to that point. Private funding is where it's at, because you can use private funding to put whoever you want wherever you need them. And you don't have to worry about going through any of that stuff. Angela, you make a great point. And You're spot on. It's really hard. It is really, really hard. And so anyway, we're working towards it. And again, we're
So
just.
you should focus on the bigger city. You should focus on Healdsburg and put the shelter there because that's where more resources are. That's where more count is. That way we don't have an issue here with you guys falsifying the count because it was your agency. It was not you, but you represent that agency. So unfortunately, you get the brunt end of everything. Unfortunately, that's not my problem. My problem is that I constantly have to watch Reach for Home sneaking into Cloverdale to inflate numbers, buy houses, steal them out from single families that are trying to purchase a home by overbidding cash close, and then stacking all the homeless in there that aren't even from Cloverdale, that aren't even veterans. You guys claim to have veteran housing, but it's not even Cloverdale vets. You want to focus on Cloverdale? Well, then bring Cloverdale's people over to Healdsburg. There you go. Open up your shelter, have a kumbaya, stack everybody in there, get a shuttle, drive them back and forth. They want to hang out in Cloverdale, drive them back and forth. Who cares? Quit focusing on destroying our community and inflating numbers and saying that these homeless want help. They do not want help. The homeless people that you're talking about are people that are struggling, their families, their individuals, they're in between jobs. That's one thing. But all these tweakers running rampant and stealing and lighting fires, there's no help there. There's no help there. They're just a body just waiting to decompose somewhere. Bottom line. I know
Thanks,
that
Angela.
sounds heartless, but it is what it is. Quit shaking your head, Jody. It's the truth.
Renee?
Yes, I'd like to ask the same question, maybe a different way. I'm not clear from the answer from Margaret. So Margaret, how many total houses are in Cloverdale? How many beds does that equate to? And how many Cloverdale citizens are in those beds?
And we have our partnership home, and it has 4 beds, and 2 of them are Cloverdale residents, and the other 2 are, I believe, Healdsburg. Anna might be able to chime in on this one. And then we have our 2 homes that have, Anna, can you go ahead and chime in on that? Actually, I want to make sure I'm giving you accurate information.
Yeah, so the 2 additional homes that we have in Cloverdale are a mixture of people who've been previously homeless in Healdsburg as well. It is a different program. So there is, we're talking about people who are chronically homeless. So that's permanent supportive housing program. And then we also serve rapid rehousing through the other 2 homes.
Okay, so there's a total of 3 homes, and I didn't quite catch the math as far as how many total homes are in Cloverdale with total number of beds.
Yes, so 3 homes. The first one that Margaret was talking about with the 4 bedrooms.
4 beds. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
actually, it's 5. 5. Mm-hmm. And then
5.
there's 2. There's 2 other homes, and those are 3-bedroom each.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it'd be helpful just to, I don't have the visibility to that, and it'd be helpful to know, definitely if we're trying to get funds and the homes are physically in Cloverdale, to try to have that focus on Cloverdale residents that want housing and that are willing to get it with the supportive services. So thank you.
No problem.
And that's focused on Cloverdale people, correct? Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chair, if I may, please. Just quickly, man, I think that there's a serious disconnect and misunderstanding from the public as to what really is, we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about homeless. Yes, sir.
I got a text that said they can hear you.
Oh,
Up here, and
yeah, of course.
apologize.
No.
I'm getting text messages from doing.
Yes, sir. No,
I can't hear.
Thank you. It's hard to hear.
So, a couple things. And I'm sure the chief is well, city management, I'm sure you folks are aware, and I'm sure it's a difficult job, helping educate the public as to the process. I hear a lot of, well, why aren't Cloverdale residents going into, Cloverdale homes all the time? we're talking about very different subjects here. I'm not really sure why we're refraining from using anyone's name. All of these people have been blown up on Facebook, their pictures, their personal information, so I'm not really sure why we're so careful about that. Okay, and I respect their rights a lot, I really do, but I just feel like this is such a rocket mess. I have a lot of respect for Reach for Home. I hope somebody's holding them accountable. I hope, Chair, that you or city management is going to Reach for Home and say, who are these 14 individuals? I'd also like to know, what do we do after we ask them if they want housing? Where did they go then? Because I can say from personal experience, when I ask them, hey man, what's next for you? Boy, if I can't ask them if they wanted an apartment and then provide one for them, I suspect I'm going to lose them. Are we in fact following up? Is there a process that, okay, we've identified 14 individuals. Now, of course, we have to narrow that group down because, I mean, let's be honest. There are a number of them that you can't just walk up and say, hey man, do you want a house? We'll put you in a nice place right now if you get off the river. Are we, I'm sure the chief is, but as a council, as city management, are we also participating? Are we all actively working together to identify that, okay, this is not a homeless problem, this is an affordable housing problem, and then categorizing them correctly to the right people? Are we putting too much on Reach for Home? Again, I have a lot of respect for my Jacqueline and Tim, I know all those folks. Do they have that capability? Again, and I think I'm probably driving right back to the same point. When do we address that in Cloverdale for the 4 nameless individuals? The other 10 that I suspect are right there close to that condition? Of course, too, I'm sure you're well aware. I mean, none of us were born tweakers. Something happened. So to categorize them as just soulless people waiting to decompose, not going to solve the problem, okay? Those soulless decomposing people are standing on my fucking porch, wanting to know, Sean, what's next for me? What's being done? Who do I call? Who can I contact? A lot of these people will absolutely say, yeah, no Reach for Home spoke to them 1,000 times. Nothing has been offered to me other than a box of canned vegetable soup and a loaf of bread. How do we focus on that group, man? Coordinated entry, that's the racket for this group.
So that's why I asked the question to Margaret, as what, if one person wanted in that bed today, what it's taken, they basically said they can't.
Yes.
What do we do now?
What do we do now? Yes,
You're
sir.
100% right on that question, because we can all sit here and spend our money on programs that were given by the state or by the Fed. There's no question the Fed didn't do any good.
Sure.
So
Now, one last thing, before I let you get back to it, one other thing I really want to stress, okay, and it's been brought up by a couple of individuals, private funding, okay? I watched the Cloverdale Theater raise $35,000 in 45 minutes to pay for a new marquee on the theater there. Something tells me that if we put the same amount of effort, we put the same amount of consideration and time into generating a solution here for those 14, something tells me that private funding will step up. Now, how do we collectively agree? How do we work together as a community to decide, okay, this is our plan and this is what, goddamn it, we're going to do. This is the price tag on it. These are the people we need. And I mean, they're here. Michael Velasquez is a hell of a guy. Him and I did a hard time out there documenting, getting to know them. What's their issue? What can we do to solve their problem? Cater specifically to them. Again, the regional home people are great. We have all these resources. How do we get to generate a plan specifically to these individuals? And we haven't, rolled over now for the last number of years.
and the July 13th meeting, we discussed a lot of. Margaret, can you hear me? I want to make sure you can hear me when I'm saying this stuff.
I can when you're faced that way a little better, maybe split the difference so everyone else can.
So we've been having county meetings for the homeless because a bunch of money is being given a lot of to California. And with that, Margaret and I are in a group together, and Kevin's in the same group, and it's a whole bunch of community outreach things along those lines. Reaching Home has done a whole bunch of homework to categorize each person. Now that she has that, she can label who's in Cloverdale, and now we are to that point that it's time to have that sit down, come to Jesus meeting, take this group of 10 of us and go out on the street, find that person, and we say, this is your house here at Poland Avenue. This is your place on Galupa.
Yes, sir.
But we need to figure out how to make those doors be open in that exact moment. As we know, if they don't get in the car right then, they're not going to in 45 minutes.
Yep.
We watched with one of our people that one of the two main ones,
Yes,
that we had a bed picked out, ready to go.
yes, sir, I
And
know.
we had to drag 3 days at the heart program down
I'm
here.
curious.
3 days I'm chasing this person around who's yelling and FUing me to get rid of, finally agree to get in a car and go to this program.
Yes, sir.
After she already said she wanted it, but an hour later she didn't.
Yes,
So we understand.
okay, great, that's the good news, man.
Margaret has to have the beds in the house ready to go. Colleen has to have the beds in the house ready to go.
Yes, sir.
Whoever it is, where you say, Joey, you want a bed? They say, yes. Then they get in that car right there.
Very good.
You
Now,
don't blink an
my
eye.
concern.
The person that,
Colleen,
the person with the health issue,
Yes, sir.
I did this in front of City Hall 2 years ago. I had everyone in here that's on this meeting, and they said, we have X, Y, and Z, everyone. I offered it to him. I got a big fat finger and asked for $20 to buy a drink.
Sounds right.
Right?
Yes,
So he
sir.
got one right back and said, you have nothing come.
Yes, sir.
So
And
it's all the individual in
unfortunately,
the time.
there will be some situations like that. I was Colleen has a remarkable program, and she serves a select group. I'm looking for solutions for the guy that is saying, kiss my ass, give me $20. My solution that I'd like to continue to investigate is somewhere, the courtyard, somewhere, 10 by 10 garden shed with padlock on.
This is where now the program with LG housing, things like that.
Oh, come on.
Exactly. That's where we start looking at programs like that, to take those last 7 people and say, you are no longer allowed to be on the river because this is available to you.
Yes, sir. Fabulous, thank you.
That's where we're at now. We're really honing in, and it's getting somewhere. I'm impressed. In the past, 6 months that I've been on the council, that we've seen progress, not because of me, just because of people working together. In this 6 months, because for 2 years, David worked on this program.
Yes, sir.
And it's finally getting there to where there's answers coming. You know, people like Margaret working the way that she does, Michael, the things that he does, and 2 people in this room, 3 people in this room right now, the programs are finally getting the answers. The money's coming from Newsom. It's time to start making it happen.
Please, yes,
You're
sir.
100%, and you will be involved. I will call you.
Yeah, no, for those reasons,
Now you're putting money where your mouth is.
Thank you, yes, anytime you like.
I know.
There's one last thing, okay, that I want to clarify because I've been a part of it, okay? I love Angela Cordova very much. Her and I often disagree. I have been a part of that homeless count. Reach for Home is ultimately not who is falsifying that count. Okay, that count is not accurate, and there is a good damn reason for it. That count is what determines how much cash they're going to peel up. So when you check in with Chief Jenkins, when you check in with former chief of police and you ask them, hey, why did we do that? When those people have been on previous homeless counts, they'll give you a straight answer. Damn right. Yeah, we know that we have exactly 26 folks in Cloverdale, and we're aware that the county submitted 86. That's the reason for that. I think it's rotten, but boy, goodness, it's the world we live in. So for there too, I'd like to take some of that heat off of Reach for Home. I know that Angela had issue with Leanne, and I know, I've heard it, and I had the same ones the previous year. But ultimately, I don't think anything, thank you.
No, we understand.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Please, Debbie.
There's a whole other population that we're not even talking about, population that we deal with at Health Center that are homeless, but they're not on the river, they're not in the plaza, they're sleeping at friends' houses, they're moving around. It's a whole nother dynamic, and those people are counted as well. And this year's count is our patient load for unhoused, homeless, 92. Okay, so the records aren't falsified. They're just not the typical homeless on the river. And those are the ones that Jody's trying to help multiple times a day to get housing. So it's not just just the group that we've been talking, they're the biggest problem, I agree, and they need a different type of solution. But I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that there is a whole nother set that's going on. They work, have kids, they need housing and they need assistance.
Thank you, Debbie. And I know that we've spoken with that in the past because you work hard in your line of work, sees everyone that we're talking about.
Right.
And so it's the true accurate number. And you know, I came to you a couple of years ago, I said, okay, what is the number?
Yeah.
And you gave it to me. It was a little higher than that. So I don't know if we're going in the right direction or not.
It was 103 at one point. This year it's 92, and that's great. So it's coming down, but I mean, not.
But it doesn't mean that they are not homeless.
That's right. That's right.
So Any questions in here? There's a lot being said here. Any comments, anything?
Well, you know, one of the big, solutions is gonna have to be regarding emergency shelter for individuals. And that is one of the outcomes of the county level. And that is probably going to be able to answer some of the concerns that our Cloverdale people have. But then again, these people who might be able to be housed in emergency shelter might not necessarily stay in Cloverdale because we don't have the facility. Then again, how many people from Cloverdale are in Houston? Do we know that? Do you have any idea, Margaret?
Todd, can you repeat, something about how many people in Healdsburg? I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Yeah, how many people, are there any people from Cloverdale in Healdsburg or Windsor or elsewhere?
Anna would have specific information, but I mean, people do go both ways. It's not, so yes.
Martha, I'm sorry, are you referring to people in houses or people that are not housed? I'm so sorry, I couldn't really hear you.
Cloverdale homeless people who have been placed elsewhere.
Yeah, it goes both ways, like Margaret's saying, especially if they're looking for shelter and their shelter opportunities not only in Healdsburg and by Reach for Home, it's throughout the county, yes.
And do they stay put or do they come back to the previous status as homeless?
Most people come back because they want to stay where they're from.
So they become homeless.
If they're going to a shelter, yes. If it's going to housing, I mean, it takes a long time to, kind of adjust into housing again. So it's a whole support system, but it goes both ways, yes.
Thank you.
We get Melanie.
Yeah. Melanie, you can unmute yourself and to make comments.
Melanie Hall, can you unmute yourself so you can talk to us?
Okay, I unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious if Debbie Howell and Margaret have had a chance to put those numbers together, because that is part of the problem is even though they're, the shelterless are not living on the street, they're living in other people's homes. It certainly still should be in the count. Todd, I know I sent you a link about a program that my daughter's boss oversees, which is the safe parking program. And that's for obviously people that still have a vehicle and can sleep in, a safe parking spot. And it's set up for them, during the night hours. I think of the train depot that isn't being used and how, at least that's another place for, I don't know, Debbie said a number I thought was 92, which sounds like quite a few people. I don't know if something like that would be a solution, at least for part of them. But Margaret's numbers that she got from the people that are unsheltered on the street, it sounds like the majority of them would gratefully go into a home and get services. So it really sounds like it's a very small amount that really needs some intense solution. But I'm just looking at the bigger picture. And then my other question is between Cherry Creek and Wallace House and the Reach for Home homes, are Cloverdale people given priority, or is it anywhere from Windsor, Healdsburg, and Cloverdale that the unsheltered can be put up here?
It depends on the type of funding that the housing has. So in Colleen's case, because her funding is not tied to the same coordinated entry system as her home, definitely, and Colleen can speak obviously, but my understanding is she can prioritize 100% Cloverdale. With us, we try to prioritize Cloverdale and work the best we can to get Cloverdale people in Cloverdale housing and Healdsburg people into Healdsburg housing, but we also have to work with the county through the coordinated entry system. So We do our best. But we have Cloverdale people who go to Healdsburg. So, you know, like Anna was explaining, it kind of goes ways. And another thing I would, a partnership home in Cloverdale, about a Cloverdale resident who's living there, who's a vet, and it would give you a little bit of a better understanding of our program if anyone.
Does that answer your question, Melanie?
Yes.
It's like Margaret's having a little computer issue right now.
Yeah, it was.
Anna, I have a question for you, kind of piggybacking off of Melanie. If we have somebody from Healdsburg in a house in Cloverdale, and they preferred Healdsburg, when one opened up there, would they be allowed to move back to that one, back to their own hometown?
That would be that would be an ideal situation, given that the funding and the correct program is in place. I don't see I don't see why we wouldn't. The only reason we wouldn't is if, you know, for whatever reason the program doesn't fit their current needs of that individual, then we wouldn't want to set them up for failure and go back to homelessness. So we for sure would look into that. And I think what Margaret was trying to say was that we're going to be posting a video of an update of one of our Cloverdale homes. So you'll get more of a, you know, get to know the folks that live there too.
Thank you. Looks like we have Angela's hand.
Sorry, Angela, you can unmute yourself.
Todd, you said that you were working with Reach for Home. Are you overseeing their count and their surveys?
Not yet. However, we're in the same meeting together, and we will be taking their information together and using it for our locals now, because they're just finishing that information.
And do you plan on breaking down the homeless count by who's sleeping on couches and who's living on the river and who is living in the plaza and what have you, et cetera, to break down exactly what the count is and how they structure it? Because, you know, I understand, like I have a 20-year-old living at home because she can't find anywhere to rent, right? So is she part of your count? You know what I'm saying? Like, she's not homeless, but she can't go out there and find anywhere to live. So is she considered as part of the unsheltered?
No.
So, well, then what's the difference with somebody who's sleeping on a couch, who's 20 years old, that you guys mentioned people, you know, couch surfing? What's the difference there? If they're inside of a home, they're not homeless.
But if it's not their home and they're couch surfing,
But this is, my daughter's an adult. She's 20 years old. This is my home. But if I tell her to leave, she then becomes homeless, right? So my part of the solution is to allow my adult children to live at home because they can't find a place to rent. So I would hope that you guys, you know, take it case by case. And like Sean said, I have to absolutely agree with you. I had 4 homeless people tell me that they specifically interviewed with Reach for Home and there was zero follow-up, nothing at all. They started reaching out to me to ask me what my resources were to help them get an apartment, help them get food, help them find resources. Michael Velasquez, you know, because I've reached out to you directly and asked you where we can find these resources. So Reach for Home can do all the surveys they want, but what is the outcome? And then you just mentioned to Anna, you know, is it ideal for somebody who's living up here from Healdsburg and a spot opens up down there? Why does there have to be a certain funding in place? Why can't that individual go from a Reach home to another Reach home in the area that they're from, or they will choose to be, or they live, or whatever the case might be? Why is it that we have so many Reach for Homes here in Cloverdale, and we have, what, 2 Cloverdale people living there? And we have how many on the count? Nobody even knows a true number of the count. And I personally was there. I was there when they did the count for the homeless. And I know what I saw, and I turned them in for fabricating the numbers, for falsifying the numbers. I personally witnessed that.
We're not
So
disputing that, Angela.
it's not a day by day scenario. The homeless that are up here, they're pretty regular. You might get the occasional off the bus to hang out, but then they cut out, you know, they don't stay. For the most part, they're pretty regular up here. So it's not a hit and miss kind of a deal. Oh, the count just happened to be so inflated that day. They all just happened to stay the night and hang out. No.
Okay, Angela, Colleen, trying to help answer a lot of the questions that you have regarding the couch surfing.
Well, one thing that might be helpful, okay, when Margaret
Colleen,
talks about
who?
the funding source, okay, so most of the funding flows.
Colleen, hold on.
Colleen, hold on.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Sorry about that. So a lot of the confusion relates to the definition. So if you got funding through HUD, which is where most of it comes from, they're going to give you funding depending on who you're going to serve. If it's chronically homeless, which means they have to be homeless for more than a year, generally, that's the definition. And then they're also prioritized by what's called a vulnerability index. So if they've got chronic health conditions, or there's a lot of interaction with police and emergency room visits and ambulances, and those people are going to be prioritized with a certain funding source. Those are people that are literally homeless. Then you've got people that are precariously housed. And those are the people that might be couch surfers. They're not considered literally homeless. And then there are the ones that are imminently at risk. So those people who are imminently at risk are going to be homeless any minute or any day or any month. So that's how they categorize it and they break it down. So if we want to get specific about how to count them, we need to be clear about our definition. So I was just wanted to mention that. So are we talking about chronically homeless, literally homeless, precariously housed, or imminently at risk?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out, because it seems to me that I understand you guys are all trying very hard for the people that want the help. But you know, it is so hard for me, I'm speaking for myself, to have any kind of respect or a helping hand for people who have zero respect for our community, who are out here setting fires. And I understand they have mental illness. I understand they're on drugs. I get all of that. But I cannot be civil with people like that and extend my help to people like that. And I won't. And that is when I come to these meetings and I refer to the homeless, that is exactly who I'm referring to. That's who I am speaking of, are the people who are destroying our community, who don't care and who don't want your help. And we need to not focus on them. We need to do exactly what you guys just mentioned. Here's your offer. If you're not going, you're out of here. You guys got to figure that gray area out, because right now they can just do whatever they want.
Thank you, Angela. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Melanie, I know you had your hand up. Would you wish to speak?
Actually, Colleen clarified everything. I just thought it would be helpful if either Colleen or Debbie clarified the difference between having a adult child in your home and you know, somebody who maybe is not part of a family, who is could be homeless but stays in another person's home on their couch. So thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Yes.
I got a question for Margaret. Can you hear me?
Margaret is not on there anymore.
Oh.
Ask,
I can do my best to answer.
Or Anna? Is Anna for Reach for Home?
Yes.
Yes.
So it was a few months ago, I think it was. And I think it was Reach for Home. She was talking about that there wasn't a system to track these people. So if they went from one program to another, what is the progress on that program?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that? My service isn't great, so I'm going to turn off my video and hope that makes it better. But do you mind repeating?
And if you can you give an update on the access program that's being implemented by the county?
The Access Program?
Right. For tracking unsheltered individuals.
Yeah, I definitely that Margaret could answer that question better. And if any of you have more information, please feel free to chime in. But what I gather is they're working with our team. Well, we've been working with them to try to capture more folks and navigate through the mental health system. And as you know, I think it's an ongoing conversation about Laura's Law and the difference between people who are in requesting services and are able to accept services versus those who aren't able to fully engage because of mental health disabilities.
Thank you, Lana. We know it's a moving target right now, and that's something we were focusing on the county homelessness group, is trying to get more of that tracking going.
Great, thank you.
Because that's definite good information for us. Dave, would you like to speak to that program? Sounds like you know a little bit more about it.
Sure, happy to, Chair. And then if it's okay with you, I just have a few recommendations on how we might be able to move forward in this process. But there is a lot of moving pieces. The county is doing a lot of work in the homelessness space and trying to develop systems to help tracking, which should help inform our local care providers like Alexander Valley Health, that they can at least, there's a common database on which our homeless service providers, our healthcare providers, our behavioral health providers can all access, so we can monitor and track who the homeless individuals are and what kind of care and services that they're obtaining. And they're developing that, so we're trying to actually create a public portal so we can, as community members, at least get the basic information, but not the protected information that protects under HIPAA in terms of their specific medical care. That's a project that's in progress, and I think it's working. I don't know, Debbie, if there's anything, if you could kind of confirm that, if that's something.
You're correct. That's what they're trying to do.
It was a program developed by IBM, so it's very technology intensive, but the goal is to help inform, even the police department and the public and all the health providers. So that's about the limit of my understanding of the program, but I know it's something that is the intended outcome, so that we can have better information. And we know when folks are being offered, like shelter, for example, when they deny it, and ultimately, again, can help inform law enforcement if they have the ability to, under Boise, to actually take action. We recently, the Northern Sonoma County cities, including Windsor, Healdsburg, and Cloverdale, along with the unincorporated area, with Supervisor Board's guidance, adopted a draft strategic plan. Ultimately, I think that's what we want to get to. We want to bring forward a plan that we can share with council and community, can look at really just define the policies. We've done a lot of work with Kevin, surveys to kind of prioritize what those are. But listening to the conversation today, there's still some work, I think, around the kind of the demographic factors that we need to understand better in terms of not just who are those specific homeless individuals that are maybe out on the street, out on the river, but also kind of what's the breakdown by category. So I kind of like the categories that you provided, Colleen, about the chronic homelessness. So how many people are we talking about? How many are precarious? How many are imminent? Because it seems like ultimately our strategic plan, our master plan, should reflect different strategies for those different demographic groups. I think one I think about, for example, that's kind of pulls at my heartstrings are those folks, usually are women that are maybe experiencing sexual abuse or violence in their home, and the strategies to address that population is going to be very different than the strategies that are going to be targeted towards those maybe who are chronic. So my suggestion, Chair, would be staff to work with some of our homeless service providers, our healthcare providers, to help kind of refine the plan to identify the numbers of the demographics within these groups, prioritize those policies that we get through the survey, and actually bring forward a draft document. I think there's a lot of what we have here. It addresses some of the questions even that Sean raised today. There's still a need to identify funding, and I think one of the issues that's been raised is private funding, and I think that's another strategy that we hadn't talked a lot about, but maybe we can start building something around that. What does that look like? That's to answer Sean's question. Well, how do we raise and bring private dollars to assist in coming up with the solutions that we want to implement? And I know Michael has been working in that space and bringing private donations. So maybe there's some strategies that we can reflect in our plan. So we can show here's all the things we're doing. We're trying to access public funds, state funds, through the governor, through HUD, for certain programs, or looking targeting private donations for certain efforts. So that would be my suggestion. And maybe the next step would be we start integrating some of these questions into our plan so that we can actually bring it forward and we can have something to point to. So here's what we got. This is what we're going to do. So that's kind of my thoughts on I tried to take notes and digest a lot of the comments today. And I think it is time we're kind of starting to rehash stuff that we can take all the comments and input and actually try to build it into a planning document and then start actually implementing some of those conditions. So, Chair, that's my thoughts and recommendations for the group and for your consideration, and Vice Chair and Mayor.
I completely agree, and I think you nailed it. Madam Mayor, please.
Yes, I would add to what David said, a level of education to the public in terms of what are the tails or the strings attached to variety of funding sources. Because the reason why there's an emphasis on private funding is because it doesn't say you must have two people who are, let's say, in substance abuse and two people who are just with mental health. It is for whomever it is at the moment. While other programs have other requirements, and people need to understand that even though there are billions of dollars out there, some of that has restrictions that don't necessarily address the local problems that we have. Consequently, we might not have access to some of those funds. And the same thing, and that's what we would need to add to the strategic plan. An aspect of education to the public so that people understand that nobody is trying to keep funds from Cloverdale. It's just that some funding sources don't necessarily meet our specific needs, or vice versa. But I think it's a good idea that when we meet with the county strategic planning commission group that we are in, that we also say, this is how we are communicating with the community, and this is the voice of our community. And this is the things that we also need in Cloverdale. And that's why it's so important to be present in all these meetings.
And I'd also like to take it one step further, and Debbie, you might be able to answer this. When someone comes in and says they're homeless, a certain style, not our chronic that we talked about down below. Do you have anything that says, a little checkbox says, can we tell the city about you? Can we pass the information on to the county? Can we have people contact you to help you with this? Is that something you guys do?
We actually, that's one of the things that Jody spends a lot of time on. We actually work with the client, the patient, and connecting them to sources, helping them fill out the paperwork, helping them research, find places available, everything. I mean, it's a big full-time job. I mean, it's a really big job. And some people can't even really read or comprehend what they're reading.
It'd be nice.
We have to help them.
It'd be nice to have that information so that when we went to the county and we said, look, 70 people are homeless because of X, 4 are homeless because of Y. this is where the funding needs to be funneled. And this,
So
make it happen.
So I was
virtually,
gonna-
you know?
I was gonna chime in when David was talking. The key with grant funding, public funding, is to learn how to build your program to accommodate all different costs of funding. Because they're not gonna change their funding mechanism to meet Cloverdale. They're not going to. I'm just gonna say that, they're not. But we can change how we operate our program to meet the funding requirements and make them work for us. You know, this is just something that everyone does it because that's the only way we can do it. We're very specific, you know, and it's doable. We just have to have a mix of funding sources.
Is there a way for your two groups, Reach for Home, to work together to create a spreadsheet that kind of labels, in a way, all 92 of these people that we talked about, so that we can turn around and start finding ways to manipulate the system to get the correct funding?
Exactly, yes.
Is that something that we would do?
Yeah, Jody, did you hear Todd's question?
I did. I'm thinking about that, and it kind of makes my head spin a bit. There are so many different things that come into play with these 92 people that Debbie is referring to. We have age as a factor. We have medical vulnerability. A lot of these people are chronically ill and don't have family, or so reasons that some of my patients are, and I put it in quotes, couch surfing, you know, is because they don't have any family and they can't live on their own. There's nowhere for them to go. They're, you know, seniors. So this is a big question. I'm open to it, but that's a big endeavor to try to ask such a variety of reasons why people become homeless, to try to narrow that down for that many people.
If we had, you know, say 10 check boxes,
yeah,
you did a spreadsheet on everyone, you could probably get them into 5 or 6 categories that the majority would fit into. So that Cloverdale has something to go to the county with and says, this is where we are. What can we do to work together?
Well, a lot of that is resources.
Because right now, all I can talk about is the 4 guys downtown. You know, that's all I can sit and talk about because that's all I know.
And we cannot advocate for services if we don't know what the needs are. And right now, it's a big conversation with the county. What county services can we bring to Cloverdale? And we need to be able to say, these are the services we need, given the population of need among the chronic homeless and the non-chronic.
Well, housing is, for me, personally, for my patients, housing is my biggest resource of need. And it's difficult.
But if you looked at Anna's list or Margaret's list, it's not, because they won't take it. And so that's our hang up. And that's why I want to get the 3 groups together somehow so that we can get a solid list that we can stand by. And even if it is a new document every week, it's still something that we can bring to the county and say, look, here's where we are. So maybe in the next few weeks, we could try to organize something, and I would love to be part of it. I know the mayor or Dave, everybody would love to be something to maybe make this group a little smaller to get that information list started.
And I know that there's HIPAA restrictions and other restrictions.
We don't need names.
And we don't need names, we don't need specifics, we just need, you know, so many females, so many males, and this is the
Medical,
situation.
mental health, age, start checking the main boxes.
Yeah, it's great. In that way, we don't know anything and nobody has to know anything more than the facts.
And if we have that, then at $12 billion, we can start pushing for it, because right now, I can't stand up for one of those guys downtown. And that's been my problem for years.
And the other thing too is to decide what type of services that we can build and develop within our community to serve all the different.
And so when Jan Ford comes, they say, no, I want to put up a tent house, a tent city and all this parking. I'm like, no, we have 3 RVs and a bunch of guys that want to live on the river and refuse to leave. So I didn't want it because he would tell me that he wouldn't bring people from out from out of the other area. So with that said, if we can show what we truly need for Cloverdale, it'd be great.
Okay, I can work with my two people, Jody and Blake, and see when they have the time available. You guys, yeah, we can work something out. Anna, is it Anna? Alma?
Yes, Anna.
Calling into the conversation as well, and then set something up. And it
Yeah.
a preliminary document.
Absolutely.
Right. You know, it doesn't have to be totally precise. We just need something to say, hey, supervisor and board supervisor, these are services. And if you cannot bring them, perhaps some more allocation of funding for Alexander Valley Health or for Watertown and so on. Sure.
There's some urgency around this right now because there are 293, I think, emergency vouchers that are coming out of the system out of the county. Now, right? So Margaret knows about this, but it's going to be jump ball. And the ones who are going to get them are going to be the ones who have pretty intense advocacy and are what they call paper ready. So, for example, if Debbie, if Jody's been getting people ready for Medi-Cal, then they're probably paper ready for these vouchers. And the concern at the county is that we're going to have to send these vouchers back because people aren't paper ready. So, for example, someone who's chronically homeless, who's lost their ID, we're going to miss the window for them. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't take advantage of getting these vouchers into the Cloverdale system. And it may be that the landlords can't take them here in Cloverdale. We've got to branch out like we did when we had to relocate people from Cherry Creek. We have to go elsewhere. One person went to Humboldt, a couple are in Healdsburg. We had to find places wherever we could. But they got a voucher, and that voucher was portable, and they could take it and move somewhere else with it. If they wanted to come back to Cloverdale at some point, it's portable.
So what's that?
So we got to move on it.
But that's a meeting sooner than later. Who wants to be in charge of that? Jody, you have that?
Yes. So yeah, I was on a call this morning just on this and with those vouchers and like West County, and they're already putting together their list for these vouchers. So I do hear that that was already on my radar because North County kind of tends to get left out of these kinds of things if we don't speak up. So yes.
Information has been out there.
So those vouchers are going to go quick.
Let's meet, get the paperwork done, and I will be your voice if I have to. I'm very loud.
Okay.
And we'll push really hard as we can. All we can do. But we have to do something.
They're going like this, Todd, when they see us coming.
When they quit answering, yeah, you know how it is.
Definitely, we have a reputation.
I love it. I know you do, for sure. Big voices. All right, listen, it's 6:40. We're going to pull the plug on the meeting. We're over time. It's 6:45. I don't know what you can do for a while.
Mine is, yes.
So I want to thank everybody. I think we actually got more good today. I think we're really honing in on everything. And our next meeting is scheduled for September 14th, 1:30 in the library.
Michael has to stand up.
Does he? Michael, please. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Michael, can you unmute yourself? Your microphone's not working, Michael.
Take off your headphones.
Take off the headphones, plug the headphones, it'll probably work. Still not. No, sir. Still can't hear you, Michael.
Try unplugging your headphones.
Sorry, Michael.
I think it's on the bottom. I had to kind of search for it too with your guys' system.
Michael, if you text me or email me, I'll make sure to get that to the group with the questions or comments that you have. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's 6:46, meeting adjourned.